In the pulsating heart of Colombia, where the Andes Mountains kiss the sky, lies Medellín, a city of eternal spring and unyielding rhythm. It's 1976, and the air is thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of change. The streets are a symphony of life, a dance of old and new, where cobblestone alleys whisper tales of colonial grandeur while modern buses rumble past, their engines growling like caged beasts. Our story unfolds in the belly of this city, in a cramped, dimly lit office tucked away in the La Candelaria neighborhood. Here, behind a worn wooden desk, sits our guide, Carlos, a man whose eyes hold the weight of 1,000 secrets. He's a journalist, a chronicler of Medellín's shifting landscape, a witness to the city's transformation from a sleepy provincial capital to the global epicenter of a new, white-hot industry. Carlos leans back in his creaking chair, the springs protesting under his weight, as he lights a cigarette. The match flares, casting long, dancing shadows on the nicotine-stained walls. He takes a deep drag, his eyes narrowing as he exhales a cloud of smoke, and begins to speak. You want to know how Medellín became the cocaine capital of the world? You have to understand, it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, this was a city of flowers and coffee, of poets and musicians. But that was before the gringos came knocking. He pauses, his gaze drifting out the window, lost in the distant past. It started with the Vietnam War. The Americans needed a steady supply of heroin to keep their soldiers fighting. They turned to Colombia, a country with a long history of growing poppies. But the Colombian government, they were squeamish about drugs. They turned a blind eye to the poppy fields, but they drew the line at processing the opium into heroin. That's where Medellín came in. Carlos leans forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You see, Medellín was home to some of the most powerful families in Colombia. Families with money, influence, and no qualms about getting their hands dirty. They saw an opportunity, a way to make a fortune. And so, they started processing the opium, turning it into heroin, and shipping it off to the United States. He chuckles, a dry, bitter sound. The Americans were happy, the Medellín families were richer than ever, and Colombia was on its way to becoming the world's leading heroin producer. But then, something changed. The Vietnam War ended, and the Americans didn't need heroin anymore. The Medellín families, they weren't about to let all that money slip away. They needed a new product, something even more profitable. That's when they turned to cocaine. Carlos takes another drag of his cigarette, his eyes never leaving mine. Cocaine was nothing new in Colombia. It had been growing wild in the jungles for centuries. But processing it, turning it into a pure, white powder that could be shipped around the world, that was a different story. The Medellín families, they figured it out. They perfected the process, set up labs in the mountains, and started flooding the world with cocaine. He leans back in his chair, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. And that, my friend, is how Medellín became the cocaine capital of the world. But this is just the beginning of the story. This is where the real drama starts. Because with great power, great wealth, comes great danger. And in Medellín, danger was always lurking just around the corner. Carlos takes one last drag of his cigarette, then stubs it out in an overflowing ashtray. He looks at me, his eyes filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Are you ready to dive into the dark heart of Medellín? To meet the men who built an empire on the white powder that would change the world? To witness the birth of the cocaine cowboys and the bloody war that would follow? Then buckle up, my friend. Because what lies ahead is a story you won't soon forget. And with that, Carlos stands up, his chair scraping loudly against the worn wooden floor. He grabs his worn leather jacket, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. But first, he says, let's take a walk. Let me show you the city as it was, as it is, and as it will always be. A city of beauty and brutality, of hope and despair, of dreams and nightmares. A city called Medellín. As we step out into the warm night air, the city humming around us, I can't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. I know that what lies ahead is a story that will change me, a tale of power, greed, and the human spirit that will leave an indelible mark on my soul. And so, with a deep breath, I follow Carlos into the heart of Medellín, ready to bear witness to the true story of how this city became the cocaine capital of the world. As we walk through the streets of Medellín, the city's duality becomes increasingly apparent. The air is filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of laughter from families enjoying the warm evening, yet beneath the surface, there's an undercurrent of unease, a tension that's almost palpable. Carlos leads me down narrow alleyways, past crumbling colonial buildings, and through bustling markets where vendors sell everything from fresh fruit to illicit contraband. He points out landmarks, each one a testament to the city's rich history and its darker side. "See the church over there?" he asks, nodding towards a grand, whitewashed building with tall, iron gates. "It's the Church of La Candelaria. Beautiful, isn't it? But it's also the place where many of the first cocaine deals were made. The priests turned a blind eye, and the families made sure the church was well funded. It was a win-win, if you can call it that." We continue our walk, the city's energy pulsating around us. Carlos tells me about the early days of the cocaine trade, how it started small, with a few families dipping their toes into the water. But as the profits rolled in, more families wanted a piece of the action. Rivalries formed, alliances shifted, and before long, Medellín was a powder keg ready to explode. "Meet Pablo Escobar," Carlos says suddenly, stopping in front of a faded photograph taped to a lamppost. It's a grainy image of a young man with a charismatic smile and a mop of dark hair. He was just a kid when he started out, working for the families, running errands, doing whatever they told him to. But he was smart, ambitious, and he had a talent for violence. He rose through the ranks quickly, and by the time he was in his 20s, he was already one of the most powerful men in Medellín. We start walking again, Carlos's pace quickening as he gets caught up in the story. Pablo wasn't like the other families. He didn't care about maintaining appearances, about keeping up the facade of respectability. He was ruthless, brutal, and he didn't care who knew it. He saw the cocaine trade as a way to make a fortune, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get to the top. As we walk, Carlos's voice drops to a near whisper, as if he's afraid of being overheard. "Pablo started a war, you see. A war against the other families, against the government, against anyone who stood in his way. He wanted to be the king of cocaine, and he was willing to bathe the streets of Medellín in blood to make it happen. We turn a corner, and suddenly we're in a different world. The streets are narrow and dark, the buildings crumbling and neglected. The laughter and music from earlier are gone, replaced by the distant wail of sirens and the occasional pop of gunfire." Carlos looks around, his expression grim. "Welcome to Comuna 13, he says. One of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Medellín. It's a place where the rules of the outside world don't apply. A place where the only law is the law of the strongest. And right now, that law is being enforced by Pablo Escobar and his men." We walk through the neighborhood, the tension growing with each step. Carlos tells me about the violence that's become a daily part of life here, about the young men who've been forced to join Pablo's army, about the families who live in constant fear. He tells me about the rival gangs, about the government's failed attempts to regain control, and about the growing sense of despair that hangs over the neighborhood like a shroud. As we walk, we pass a group of young men, their eyes hard and cold, their bodies tense. They watch us warily, their hands never straying far from the guns tucked into their waistbands. Carlos nods at them, a silent greeting, and they nod back, their expressions never changing. It's clear that we're not welcome here, that we're trespassing in a world that's best left unexplored. Finally, we reach a small, rundown house, its walls stained with graffiti and its windows boarded up. Carlos knocks on the door, a soft, rhythmic pattern that seems to be a secret code. After a moment, the door creaks open, revealing a young woman with wide, frightened eyes. She looks at Carlos, then at me, her expression filled with fear and uncertainty. "Who are you?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Carlos smiles at her, his expression gentle and reassuring. "I'm a friend," he says. "I'm here to talk to your brother. Is he home?" The young woman hesitates for a moment, then steps aside, allowing us to enter. The house is dark and cramped, the air thick with the smell of sweat and fear. We follow the young woman down a narrow hallway, her footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. Finally, we reach a small, bare room, where a young man sits on a worn couch, his eyes fixed on the gun in his lap. "Carlos," he says, looking up as we enter. His voice is flat, emotionless, and his eyes are empty and cold. What are you doing here? Carlos sits down on the couch across from him, his expression serious. I'm here to talk to you, Juan, he says. To warn you, if you'll let me. Pablo Escobar is a dangerous man, Juan. He's not the hero you think he is. He's a monster, and he's going to destroy this city if someone doesn't stop him. Juan looks at Carlos, his expression unchanging. And what makes you think I want to stop him? He asks. Pablo has given me power, Carlos. Power I never thought I'd have. Power I won't give up without a fight. Carlos leans forward, his expression urgent. Juan, listen to me, he says. Pablo is using you, just like he's using everyone else. He doesn't care about you, or your family, or this neighborhood. He only cares about himself, and the power he can gain. If you stand with him, you're going to get yourself killed. You're going to get your family killed. You're going to get everyone you care about killed. Juan looks at Carlos, his expression filled with doubt and uncertainty. For a moment, I think he's going to listen, that he's going to see the truth in Carlos's words. But then, suddenly, his expression hardens, and he stands up, the gun still clutched tightly in his hand. No, he says, his voice filled with defiance. I won't listen to you, Carlos. I won't turn my back on Pablo. He's given me everything, and I won't betray him. Now, get out of here, before I decide to make you regret coming here. Carlos stands up, his expression filled with sadness and resignation. He looks at Juan, his eyes filled with a mix of pity and fear. Very well, Juan, he says. I tried to warn you. I tried to save you. But if you won't listen, there's nothing more I can do. Just remember, when the blood starts to flow, when the bodies start to pile up, that you could have chosen a different path. That you could have chosen to stand against the darkness, instead of embracing it. With that, Carlos turns and walks out of the house, leaving Juan standing alone in the dimly lit room, his expression filled with a mix of fear and determination. As we step out into the cool night air, I can't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me. I know that what's coming is going to be brutal, that the violence that's been simmering beneath the surface of Medellín is about to boil over. And I know that there's nothing I can do to stop it. As we walk back through the city, the streets seem darker, the shadows deeper, the tension thicker. The city that once seemed so vibrant and alive now feels like a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment. And as we reach Carlos's apartment, I can't help but feel a sense of dread, a sense of foreboding that tells me that the worst is yet to come. Carlos unlocks the door to his apartment, the sound of the lock clicking into place echoing loudly in the silence. He turns to me, his expression grave. Tomorrow, he says, things are going to get worse. Much worse. Pablo is going to make his move, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it. So, if you want to leave, now is the time. Leave Medellín, leave Colombia, leave this whole mess behind. Because once the blood starts to flow, there's no turning back. I look at Carlos, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. I know that he's right, that what's coming is going to be brutal and unforgiving. But I also know that I can't turn back now, that I have to see this through to the end. I have to bear witness to the true story of how Medellín became the cocaine capital of the world, no matter how dark and dangerous that story may be. No, I say, my voice filled with a determination that surprises even me. I'm not leaving, Carlos. I'm staying. I want to see this through, to the end. I want to know the truth, no matter how ugly it may be. Carlos looks at me, his expression filled with a mix of respect and sadness. Very well, he says. But remember, once you cross that line, there's no going back. You'll be a part of this story, just as much as anyone else. And you'll have to live with the consequences, whatever they may be. With that, Carlos turns and walks into his apartment, leaving me standing alone in the darkness. I take a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs, and I know that I'm ready for whatever comes next. I know that I'm ready to face the darkness that's about to descend on Medellín, ready to bear witness to the true story of how this city became the cocaine capital of the world. And so, with a sense of determination and a touch of fear, I follow Carlos into the heart of the storm, ready to face whatever awaits us on the other side. The night is thick and heavy as we step out into the streets of Medellín the next morning. The air is thick with tension, the usual bustle of the city replaced by an eerie stillness. Carlos and I exchange a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the storm that's about to break. We walk towards Pablo's compound, the silence broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. As we approach, we see that the gates are open, a clear invitation. We step inside, the weight of our decision settling heavily on our shoulders. The courtyard is filled with men, armed and tense, their eyes watchful. Pablo stands at the head of them all, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes burning with an intensity that's almost palpable. "Carlos," he greets, his voice a low rumble. "And our friend from the north." His eyes flicker to me, a brief acknowledgement before returning to Carlos. "Today is the day, Carlos. Today, we take what is rightfully ours." Carlos nods, his face set. "I know, Pablo. I'm ready." Pablo smiles, a cold, chilling smile that sends a shiver down my spine. "Good. Then let's begin." The pivotal moment comes as we drive through the streets of Medellín, Pablo's convoy of cars a stark contrast to the usual traffic. We're heading towards the heart of the city, towards the headquarters of the rival cartel. The tension in the car is palpable, the air thick with the scent of sweat and the metallic tang of fear. As we round a corner, we see them. A line of cars, blocking our path, their windows tinted, their engines idling. Pablo's smile widens, a feral grin that sends a chill down my spine. "Here we go," he murmurs, his hand reaching for the door handle. The gunshots echo through the streets, a brutal symphony that drowns out the screams of the innocent bystanders. The cars shake with the force of the explosions, the air thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder. I duck down, my heart pounding in my chest, as the world around me erupts into chaos. When the shooting finally stops, I look up, my eyes wide with shock. The street is a scene of devastation, the once bustling market now a graveyard of twisted metal and broken bodies. Pablo stands in the middle of it all, his gun still raised, his face a mask of triumph. He looks at me, his eyes gleaming with a wild, manic light. "We did it," he says, his voice filled with a sense of victory that's almost religious in its intensity. "We took back what was ours. We showed them that we will not be challenged, that we will not be defeated." The resolution of the central tension comes later, in the quiet of Pablo's compound. The news has spread, the city in shock, the country in mourning. The rival cartel has been decimated, their leaders killed in the brutal ambush. Pablo has emerged victorious, his power solidified, his grip on Medellín absolute. But as I look at him, I see the cost of his victory. The blood on his hands, the lives he's taken, the families he's destroyed. I see the darkness that's taken root in his soul, the monster that's been unleashed. And I know that this is just the beginning, that the true horror of what's to come is yet to be revealed. The aftermath is a grim one. The city is under martial law, the streets patrolled by Pablo's men, their guns a constant reminder of the power that now rules Medellín. The once vibrant city is now a shadow of its former self, the laughter replaced by fear, the joy by despair. The people live in constant fear, their lives at the mercy of a man who's become a god in his own right. And Pablo? He's become a legend, his name whispered in fear and awe. He's the king of Medellín, the cocaine capital of the world. But as I look at him, I see the cost of his throne. The isolation, the paranoia, the constant fear of betrayal. I see a man who's lost his humanity, a man who's become a monster in the name of power. As I prepare to leave Medellín, to return to the safety of my own world, I can't help but wonder what I've witnessed. I've seen the birth of an empire, the rise of a legend. But I've also seen the darkness that comes with power, the cost of ambition. I've seen the true face of evil, and it's a face that will haunt me for the rest of my life. And as I step onto the plane, as Medellín disappears into the distance, I can't help but ask myself, what remains? What remains of the city that once was, of the people who once lived in joy and freedom? What remains of the man who once dreamed of a better life, of a better world? The answer, I fear, is nothing. Nothing but the shadow of a dream, the echoes of a nightmare. Nothing but the ghosts of a past that can never be forgotten, a past that will forever haunt the streets of Medellín, the city that once was, the city that became the cocaine capital of the world.